Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am always your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist, paranormal investigator, and the Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am joined by my co-hosts,
author Brian McKinley, godfather of vampire thrillers,
and Baron Voltage, small, medium, at large, and usually the comic relief.
generally. And we've got a guest tonight, Carrie Vaughn, author of the Kitty Norville series. Before we get into that, I do want to give a plug to our first sponsor, which would be Audible. Folks, if you got... Oh, and I need to mute this. If you guys like books like we do, and I think most people do, Audible is a great resource to check out. You can get an audiobook a month, $15 about. Mm-hmm. There's a link in the description. If you audibletrial.com/paranormally, audibletrial.com/paranormally. If you use the link, you can get a free month and a free book. Carrie's books are on there. Brian's books are on there.
And Rice's books are on there.
Rice's books are on there. Dicker Stoker's books are on there.
Oh, yes.
There are thousands of options. It's a really great source. You can put it on your phone. You can put it on your computer, tablets, all that stuff.
Not just fiction, either.
Nope.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of reference materials.
But why don't we introduce our caller at this point? Yes. Carrie, are you there?
Yes. Yes, hello.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So I gave a little bit of intro. Why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
It's the fun part.
Well, I'm Carrie Vaughn. I am a science fiction and fantasy writer, and I'm probably best known for my Kitty Norville series about a werewolf named Kitty who hosts a talk radio advice show for supernatural creatures.
Love it.
We've got the creature from the Black Lagoon on line 5.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if your vampire boyfriend is a pain in the neck, Dr. Phil just wouldn't be able to handle that problem, so they needed their own
Zing.
Self-help radio advice show.
Awesome. Sounds like something I'd be listening to.
I've loved it. I picked it up a bunch of years ago. Before I did radio back in the 90s and 2000s, and then I started here again a year ago on YouTube 3 years before that. So I picked up this series, and it's like, wait, this sounds like my life.
Yes.
Yeah, it's something I would definitely like to check out.
Yes, it's definitely something rather interesting, to say the least.
So do you have a background in radio? I mean, is there anything in particular that drew you to that idea, the radio show advice columnist?
Yeah, it was literally listening to Dr. Laura and Dr. Phil on those kinds of shows and getting a little bit irate about them. Their focus seems to be kind of narrow and sensationalistic. I don't have a background in radio, and people are often surprised to hear that. It's a little gratifying to hear that I got those details in the books right. And I was mostly coming at it as a listener. When I was writing those sections of the books, I wanted people to feel like they were listening to the show. So I didn't necessarily want to include a lot of, the nitty-gritty details of radio. Because, I think, when I came up with the idea, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was really popular. I'd been reading some of those books about, the urban fantasy novels about vampires and werewolves in the quote-unquote real world and what that would actually be like. And, a lot of times the real world didn't really come into those stories, and that turned out to be the part I was most interested in. What if vampires and werewolves were real? Or, if the National Institutes of Health announced tomorrow that they had discovered that these things were real, which is a scene that actually happens in the series. And they would have reality TV, they would have radio shows, there'd be congressional hearings. A little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I really wanted to go at it from that angle. What would some of these really mundane things actually look like with vampires and werewolves and ghost hunters and all that other supernatural stuff that people were playing around with?
I actually just realized that there is a real-life zombie that is a talk radio host.
Is there?
Yes, Larry King. Have you not seen the man? There you go.
Is he a zombie or does he...
Is he a zombie or is he a lich?
I don't know.
He may be a lich.
You want to know what? I think he's...
Have his soul stored in some...
I know exactly what happened.
Artifact.
His soul was...
Is he a lich?
Yes, he might be a lich, but I think his soul was absorbed into his suspenders. That's why his head droops down and it looks like he has a hump now.
That would explain it. The suspenders are the placenta carry.
Yes, it is. I mean, after all he has to do is simply say, like, I think we've been dealing with a whole lot of stuff here in the world, especially off from the Black Lagoon. Sheboygan, you're on the line. And there it is.
But no, that's something I like about your series. Is just how as much as the main characters, a werewolf, there's vampires, there's fairies, there's so many other things out there. It's like, yeah, how does the National Institute of Health look at all of this? How does the CDC?
How do the courts deal with it? Yeah.
In case in point, I just started Kitty Goes to War, and she's getting sued.
Oh no, sued. Fake news? No. I had to go there. I do apologize. You did not hear that.
We're gonna forget you said that.
Yeah.
Brain
Success!
We're going to try.
My deepest apologies, ma'am. I do have a tendency to really act as a foil to Kevin.
And we're all a bunch of goofballs, if you haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good series. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
No, thank you for reading it. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, and I definitely recommend it to the audience. Again, you guys can go to the Audible link, and you can get the first book for free. Kitty in the Midnight Hour, or Kitty in Orville in the Midnight Hour.
To say the least, it sounds interesting. You know what? You just inspired me to read yet another dang book. I hate you, Kevin.
That's a good thing.
Another series,
There's always
yeah.
more books.
Yeah, I just got done binge reading all of the Stoker trilogy. All right, I was in the process of reading through the entire Asimov Foundation trilogy. Now I got to add this too.
Yep.
Yeah, see, the wonderful
to
thing
read
about
mine,
books
too.
is they don't go bad.
No.
You can put them on your to-be-read pile, and they'll always be there. I love my to-be-read pile.
It's true.
No matter what I feel like reading, there's always something there. No, books are great.
And thank God for I have to say, as much as, like many people, I love physical books, but thank God for the digital age, because if I actually had a physical to-be-read pile, it would reach Mars at this point.
Yeah.
Who needs a rover? You've got a stack.
Yeah, I've discovered my library will loan out ebooks, and it's really great when you're reading a series and you finish one 11 o'clock at night and you want the next one, and it's right there, and I can download it without getting out of my pajamas.
There you go.
That's a neat
So yeah,
feature.
I was a slow convert to ebooks. I also really love hard copy, but I have to admit there's been some moments where I've been very grateful for ebooks, and they're a lot easier to store.
Well, I mean, there certainly is something to be said for a physical copy of any type of book.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, every single bibliophile out there has that one dream of having that one room in their house that's just lined with volumes, and all you see are the spines of every single book, sorted by
a proper
subject
library.
matter. Oh yes, actually having a library.
I had that briefly.
Oh, you
did.
lucky
Yeah,
man.
my current house,
I
as
lived the
soon as I
dream.
moved in, I was able to put floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on one wall in the living room. Now, it's not
Beautiful.
an entire library, but it does make me happy to walk in the front door and just see that wall of solid books.
Well, I mean, the fact that if you can even look at it and you say, this is my library. It's not, oh, those are my books over there. No, that's my library. There's something, it like gives a warm fuzzy and a strange, lycanthropic way, a warm fuzzy. There you go. Too much of a pun?
The wear bookworm.
Yes, the were bookworm.
By day, they're a bookworm. By night, they're also a bookworm.
And they
They're
also,
an actual worm.
Yeah.
and the hunting rabbits.
Okay, then.
You're welcome. I'm telling you, I'm going to make his head explode at some point. I'm going to turn his entire beard gray before the end of the night.
You have
Swear.
no idea how many... I've met crazier people than you, man.
Challenge accepted? Question mark?
So, Carrie, how
I
did
was
you
going to
get
say, this is
started?
starting to sound like a goal
Yeah.
rather than happenstance.
You see, she's on my side.
Yes, yes. But that was a good question on Brian's part. You want to say it again?
How did you get started?
Is that for me?
Yes.
In writing?
Yeah, with writing and all that.
They already know how I got started being crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have always written. People ask when I got started, and I think officially the first short story I ever wrote, I was 8 years old. It was for second grade. It was Black Stallion fanfic, basically.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear
Because
God.
I had just read The Black Stallion, and I wanted to write the same story, but with a girl horse instead of a boy horse. Because I do that kind of thing. And I just kept writing, and started trying to get published in high school and got to college and realized there was really nothing else I wanted to do. So and I've always been a science fiction and fantasy reader, so that was just naturally what I gravitated to. And I've written a little bit of everything. I've got about 20 novels out now in various kind of subgenres. A bunch of short stories. I've been doing it full time for, I have to do the math here, 11 years, 12 years now.
Nice.
Really impressive.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
It's always great when you can actually make a living doing what you love.
Oh, without a
that's,
doubt.
that's the dream.
You know what? I think...
it took a lot of work to get there, but yeah, I'm pretty fortunate.
Now, I'm going to presume you had plenty of particular literary influences that pushed you not only towards your subject matter, but perhaps your writing style. And you have your favorites and possibly your not-so-favorites. I think I'm going to actually throw down a gauntlet here, just a slight little bit. Yeah, I know. Oh, you gotta love that. If you would be so kind, I would name maybe an author or two or five, and you could either tell me loved it, hated it, or never heard of it. Would you be willing to share? And then possibly give the reasons behind each.
That's an interesting approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start.
I sort of reserve the right to kind of temper, just the whole writer tribe thing, like we're all in it together.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, certainly, without a doubt.
Anybody.
Oh no, not necessarily.
Unless they're dead.
Yeah, well, then.
Well, there's a question of there are plenty of writers out there that I think are great writers that aren't my taste. It's not because they're bad writers.
Right.
It's the mystery genre. There's some great mystery writers. It's just not generally speaking my thing.
But then you've got Twilight.
Yeah, if I can give a really specific reason for not being a fan of a certain writer.
There you go.
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, all right, then instead of hated it, be liked it, didn't quite enjoy it as much as I thought, and then never heard of. I like doing little modifications there. Okay, let's start.
Okay.
Clive Barker.
I haven't actually read Clive Barker.
Oh,
I know he's a giant of the horror field, and for whatever reason, I've probably read a short story here and there just because I read a lot of anthologies. But I know he's hugely influential, and a lot of people really love him, and for whatever reason, I just have not read his work yet.
Oh, well, there you go.
I've been a horror fan my whole life, and I only read him relatively recently myself.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of him, honestly.
Well, there you go.
It's kind of amazing to me that it's like no matter how much I read, there's always more out there.
Exactly.
There's the books I haven't read, and then there's the books I feel guilty about not having read.
There you go.
You can never read them all.
Well, it's like
You can
Pokemon.
try.
You can try. All
And
right.
the effort's worth. It is worth the effort to try.
Of course, because you can never read too many words.
No such thing as reading enough.
Unless it's an Necronomicon. All right.
Just don't read it out loud.
No, of course not. How about Stephen King?
I'm kind of hot and cold on Stephen King.
Understood.
He was actually one I was going to bring up. That I'm one of those people who like his short stories better than his novels. Which I think, for me anyway, I'm kind of a slow reader, and some of the novels get a little long-winded, and I just
long-winded.
The ones he's most famous for.
They can be.
I love his nonfiction. I love his book on writing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, great book.
I think it's really inspirational, and I think he's got a lot of really good things to say. But yeah, he's not one of my favorites when it comes to his
Understandable.
fiction.
And I would agree. I like Stephen King a lot, but I mean, it is one of my favorite novels of all time. But it is such a long book.
Which one?
What
You
do
said
mean?
you like Stephen King a lot. Oh, It. Huh. You gotta love that.
I The Stand, because
Oh yes,
Oh,
The Stand.
I really love The Stand.
Stand is good.
And then I look at it, and it's like 9 million pages.
It's intimidating. That's what
The
it
Stand
is.
is one of those books that it's like I didn't even try to read it. I just did it on audio.
17 hours later, you were halfway through the second part of the book. Yes. All right. Let's try another. Go off into a different bent here. Douglas Adams.
Oh, he's great.
Oh, there we go.
He's just one of the classics.
Indeed.
And he's fun. He's one of those writers that I try to learn something from every writer that I read. Like, how do they do the good stuff? How can I learn their tricks? But he's one that I just read. There's kind of no way to replicate what he does.
Yeah, you end up enjoying it, even especially when he goes hyper meta. with a lot of his stuff too.
That's just it. Like, if I tried to do that, it would just sound lame. So, let Douglas Adams do it and enjoy.
He was a unique talent. It's no disrespect to you or to Brian or to any of the other writers we've had the privilege of having on. It would be very hard to do what he did well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, he's very British too.
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah. I think him and Terry Pratchett have that kind of telling a good story with good satire and good meta
Yeah.
commentary and wrapping all that up with a great voice.
It's you can almost hear him in his words.
Yeah.
All right, I've got.
Sorry?
You can almost hear him in his words. Now I've got 3 more authors, just 3, and I promise these are going to be ones that one's going to make Kevin cringe. One's going to make me cringe. And one's probably going to make Beth cringe. Not exactly sure. Our producer might actually cringe or throw something at me. But make all 3 of us laugh. We'll start.
I'm curious.
Oh, yes. The first one, Anne Rice. Oh, there we go. There's Kevin cringing.
Yeah.
I read Interview with a Vampire. It was okay.
It was
Wow,
okay.
okay.
Oh, well, that's more of a glowing.
Following it, I can't argue with that.
you have a much higher opinion of her than I do.
Yeah, I was about to say, you said far more kinder words than Kevin could ever even have conceived.
Yeah. See, Kevin doesn't like
my
her. I'm
funny
a
Anne Rice
fan.
story, though, is that she wrote the Sleeping Beauty books under a...
Oh, yes. A.N.
Yes.
Rockwarer.
Yeah, when I was in college, I did some stage managing and some assistant stage managing, and we would be on headsets, so the people back in the light booth and those of us backstage could talk to each other without, actually talking to each other. And during like tech rehearsals and things where they're trying to fix the lights, and they would just go on and on and on, and we couldn't leave. We would have to sit there being bored for hours and hours and hours. One show, the stage manager started reading out loud from The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty
Oh, dear God.
Nice.
to the rest of us, and we couldn't respond really. We were just sitting there on the headsets, and we couldn't take them off, and we couldn't leave. And she's just reading and reading and reading, and that is a very fond memory that I have carried with me.
Oh no, that's awesome.
That is awesome, to say the
Yeah.
least.
I was a bit of a theater geek in school as well, so I can totally get with you there. I was more of on the acting side, but
I dabbled in both, and yeah, I remember. I mean,
God, I remember those tech rehearsals.
I remember senior year of high school when I was, stage crew. My senior year of high school was me and one other guy. There wasn't even like a teacher supervising it. It was me and one other student.
Well, there you go. And then me with my improv acting and having to deal with stuff when I was with the New York Renaissance Fair and all that stage direction improv. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. All right, next author. Tolkien.
Oh yeah,
You like?
Okay.
I like Tolkien.
You like 16
I do
chapters
like
about
Tolkien.
one step being taken? Really?
Sorry.
I like
what?
Tolkien too.
I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned having trouble with long works of fiction in a singular book when you mentioned Stephen King,
Yeah.
but Tolkien is like,
But I love medieval literature.
I see.
There's
the rub. Okay.
And yeah, so I have a master's in English literature. And
That explains a lot.
It does. Certainly does.
Well, it comes. Kitty in the Kitty books is majored in English, and I did that so that I could slip in a lot of literary references without having it sound too weird.
A full poison of
I
references.
do that a lot.
Yes.
But I mean, gosh, you've got to give Tolkien so much credit, though.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
But the cool thing from being a literature student and a medieval scholar is that he did so much work in medieval literature, and
Oh, yeah.
you start reading like his scholarly essays, and he's got like I'm forgetting the word for it. He's got the like accepted edition, like his transcription of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is like the authoritative one, and he just did a lot of stuff like that, and it all comes through in his fiction. So,
He certainly made his mark.
And he did translations
Yes.
of both Beowulf and Sir Gawain.
Oh, yes. Gawain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Two
Without-
stories I love from medieval literature.
To this day, I could still recite Shakespeare from freaking medieval literature. I love it. All right. One more, and it is the author whose name I will not mention because her book makes everybody cringe. Who wrote Twilight again?
I'm going to kill you in your face.
See what I mean?
Stephanie Meyer.
I'm going to say it. Stephanie Meyer, yes.
Oh, gosh.
Who also deserves a lot of credit for getting a lot of people to read who wouldn't
Yeah.
otherwise.
There is that.
Yeah, she did get a lot of people to read just out of morbid curiosity.
Well, and I got to tell you that. So one of the audiences for the kiddie books, and I get this a lot. I will get questions from parents and school librarians, and also from the kids themselves. But kids who read the Twilight series and are ready to graduate into something a little meatier will often pick up the kiddie series, and I'm super grateful for that as well.
Well, that's understandable.
I'll say one series I liked, I'll say specifically in its earlier stages, because of where it went, that, well, Kitty's a very different story. It hits some similar notes, at least for me, as the Anita Blake books.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, definitely.
At least
yeah.
hopefully
I
the
can
early
see that.
ones.
Yeah, specifically the early ones before it turned into softcore.
Duh.
Well, that's another one of my audiences, or people who maybe appreciated, the earlier Anita books and wanted something similar. As I
Nice.
do get that comment quite a bit.
Crossover.
Cormac reminds me a lot of Edward.
Yeah, except he actually goes to jail for killing someone. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually really did that on purpose.
Hit him.
Because a lot of these series have that kind of character. And I wanted to send one to jail and see what happened.
Well, there you go.
It was, I mean, having gone past that point where he's just been released, it's like, yeah, that is, it's like, no, wait, he's killed all of these people. He's killed people. I mean, sure, they're vampires, but especially before the big reveal, it's like, the courts don't know that. Of course he's going to wind up, people are going to wind up going to jail for this.
There you go. It's interesting to see varying types of influences, and then we take a look at varying examples, and we say to ourselves, it would be really awesome if there were crossover to universes. You could kind of like sense some semblance of influences one way or the other. You mentioned Dr. Phil and Dr. Laura, I think she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. And then you've got stuff like different aspects of movies, folklore, literature, one way or the other, influencing future folklore, literature, and movies, television, books. Is there ever any time where you've read something and you said to yourself, I need that in my next book?
Oh, I'm trying to think now. I mean, probably more times than I can even really recognize, because so
Right.
much of it is subconscious.
Right.
And then there's the times where I've gone out and researched things specifically to put in the books. So one of the books, and I'm thinking it's the one after Kitty Goes to War, is Kitty's Big Trouble, which is inspired. That title is definitely taken from Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh,
Nice.
Sweet. Best movie ever.
I do get asked that. But one of the things I wanted to do is, this is, I think, the 9th book in the series, and I wanted to get into some non-Western folklore and mythology. So I send Kitty to San Francisco's Chinatown.
Oh, now I'm
So
looking
I
forward to that
call it
even more now.
Big Trouble. And, yeah, I mean, that was really...
Does she happen to encounter the 3 storms?
She does not. She
Oh.
does not. It's just the title. Everything else that she encounters there is taken pretty specifically from... different aspects of Chinese folklore and Chinese
okay.
creatures and
I definitely need to
monsters
read
and
this
creatures
series,
and things
then.
like that.
And there's a lot of interesting Chinese, I mean,
Oh,
I don't know
gotcha.
a lot of Asian folklore, but what I know is always so interesting. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
I've enjoyed all of the books so far. I'm enjoying Kitty Goes to War, which I've only just started. I find the Werewolf Special Forces, without spoiling too much, a really interesting idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
If you ever decide to do an audio version, I'd be happy to provide my voice.
There is an audio version.
Oh, yeah.
There's already audio. Yeah, the whole series is in audio, which is really nice. I don't listen to audiobooks all that much myself, but the people who love them really love them, so I'm glad they're available.
Well, the voice actor you have doing them is Marguerite Gavin, who did another series I'm very fond of, The Hollows.
Oh, nice.
So when I listened to that first book, it's like, wait, I know that voice. And it was an even
Oh,
extra
yeah.
bonus.
Oh, there you
She
go.
does a lot of urban fantasy series books, and she's really popular. You know, the audiences seem to like her a lot.
Oh,
That
that's-
definitely makes sense. I can see there definitely being crossover appeal with like your series, the Hollows, the Sookie Stackhouse books, probably.
There
yeah,
you go.
Yeah.
Now, I got yet another question. I'm just loaded with questions. I love talking to authors. It's great. In case you haven't noticed. Considering that, as with all radio, the voice is more or less the presentation of a particular character, is there ever a point where in your mind you heard Kitty's voice and said to yourself, this is exactly how I'd want her to sound? Like, is there anybody, either popular literature, popular movies, television, radio, that you say, that's the voice I hear when I'm writing Kitty?
Not really. You know, I hear the voice in my head, and that's kind of where she is.
Got it similarly.
Yeah, you know, as great a job as Marguerite Gavin does on the books, you know, I don't listen to them because that's not the voice in my head.
Understandable.
Yeah, that makes
You know,
sense.
and I don't think I've ever heard it. I don't think I've ever heard exactly the voice that would make me think, oh yeah, that's her.
Ah. Well, you
And
hear.
that's okay.
Well, you hear our voices.
Oh, that's interesting. A lot of writers love to fantasy cast.
Oh yes. Right now, I'm already saying to myself, who would you cast Kevin as? I'm curious, hearing his voice.
Oh, I don't know. I tend not to do the fantasy casting myself, or if I do, I don't tell anyone.
Smart.
Everybody's got their own picture. You know?
She almost fell for my trap.
I have to say, going through some of the other books behind where I'm at now, I particularly like, you know, from my own background, when you bring in the paranormal team.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna take a wild guess. I'm guessing shows like Ghost Hunters inspire that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, a lot of the reality, but also, you know, for that book in particular, I did quite a bit of reading on, you know, actual paranormal investigation and how they work. Yeah, I was at Dragon Con at one point and got to actually meet one of the Ghost Hunters guys, Grant, I think. Yeah, and just, you know, talking with them and kind of hearing their stories and hearing the different philosophies. So, yeah, that was interesting. But definitely, once again, kind of like with the radio show, is I wanted people to kind of have the experience of watching one of those ghost hunting shows rather than necessarily being technically, you know, accurate.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, have you ever, by any chance, had any mesmerists or hypnotists in any of your stories?
I do have a stage magician who is a recurring character.
Another favorite.
I
was gonna say,
Odysseus Grant.
yeah, Grant and Cormac are probably my two favorite characters.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, they keep coming back because I just can't not have them come back because they're so much fun.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, I haven't had, you know, hypnotism and mesmerism specifically, but I'm betting Grant knows a thing or two because he's a pretty old school.
I was gonna say he's an old school
stage
vaudeville
magician.
magician. He knows some hypnotism.
Oh, if you need more inspiration or you want a nice little reference guide, I'm available. Tap me anytime.
Keep that in mind.
And I will say, from 20 years of doing paranormal investigation, you did a very good job of nailing it down. Particularly,
Thank you.
one thing you did I like is I've seen this happen before, and it always entertains me, is when a normal ghost hunting crew is confronted by the demonic, or the specific, I mean, I don't want to give away what it is, just because I thought it was an interesting twist. But that basically confrontation with the demonic spirit and the, well, crap, none of the stuff we usually do works with this.
Yeah.
Oops. I know what we could do. Wave a katana around in the area, open up more demonic portals. That's what we'll do.
Yes.
Shot, please.
Oh, boy.
I'm waiting for the day that guy actually calls in.
That isn't a joke. And you want to what? I'm going to keep on doing it until he does call in, specifically just for that.
Yeah, to let you in on the joke, Carrie, one of the friends of the show, a fellow investigator, got called into a case with a guy who went into a house to perform, we'll call it an exorcism, but his exorcism involved making big, elaborate circles on the ground in blue chalk and waving a katana around.
Like an ninja.
Yeah.
And bringing in his video game system because he needed something else to do besides perform an exorcism for 24 hours.
Mm.
That sounds like his attention was a little maybe scattered.
Oh, just a bit.
Yes. I think we owe Kitty $5 for the brain cells we just broke of hers out of how ridiculous that sounded.
Well, who knows? They could show up in a book.
What I find so interesting about the whole topic, though, is nothing. There comes a point where nothing surprises you, at all.
Yeah.
And another area of research that was pretty interesting and pretty useful is just the whole history of spiritualism and seances, and then, when writing the fiction, kind of trying to walk this line of what do I actually want to include, in a world that's fantastic, where I could pretty much pick and choose what's real and what's not. It got to be pretty interesting. Where do I draw the line? If I've decided that vampires and werewolves and ghosts and seances are real, there's a line there. There's sort of, what works and what doesn't, and where is that line?
And what absolutely
kind of
doesn't exist in your universe?
Question there, and I just found myself, I kept crossing it.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, real people, ironically enough, if you look around and people listen long enough, they end up realizing that the people around them all have something really, like, beyond twisted with them, or something that's just, like, way beyond the line of, like, imagination. Like, Kevin has dealt with some crap that would turn most people's hair white. Brian has written some stuff that I know for a fact would really get a person's creative gears turning in so many ways. I can't die. Beth is probably seen some stuff that will make a person go like, what the hell? Note I glossed over me because you don't want to know. Kevin, when I first showed up onto the show, actually said that I have a supervillain origin story, so it's weird.
And yet you're not a superhero.
And yet I'm not a supervillain. I'm an anti-hero. That's just plain and simple.
You don't have a secret lair.
I do have a secret lair. It's called my car. Yes. But no, I mean...
I think I just finally figured out in the Justice League of the Paranormal who he is.
Who am I?
The Shadow.
Oh, dear God, no, come on!
Yeah, you're the Shadow.
Am I really?
Mental
How is
powers.
that an insult?
I remember the movie.
Not the movie, the classic original video.
No.
Oh.
Yes, the old radio show.
I'll throw a sigil at you, you keep it up.
Hypnotism and the mind powers.
Oh, dear God.
And the snappy dresser with the hat.
True.
All you need is a scarf and you're done. You've got the costume.
Yeah, but can't he, like, die by a gunshot?
Well, theoretically, yeah, he's got the mystic power and whatnot, but he makes himself invisible and he misdirects.
Yeah, I was about to say, a gunshot couldn't stop me. A bomb couldn't stop me. A lightning strike from the heavens above couldn't stop me.
Sadly, he's not being figurative.
I'm not being figurative. I'm being literal. There's a reason why I say I can't die. So, the Shadow. Now I gotta do some more research. Another thing I gotta frickin' read. Now I gotta get the whole transcripts.
No, or just find the radio dramas.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
I bet you can find them online, and that's the way they were meant.
Orson?
Orson Welles did The Shadow.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I think
Now?
he's approving of me saying he's the Shadow.
Now?
the original radio dramas in the 30s, that was Orson Welles doing the voice.
Sploosh.
So I'm curious,
It's
Carrie.
also who knows what evil lurks within the hearts of men. The Shadow knows.
Yep.
The Shadow knows. We will leave you now.
I'm actually curious, Carrie, since you brought and it's one of the things I like about the series because it in general, being at least an amateur folklorist as well as an investigator, it always annoys me when when writers don't do their research, and you clearly do. We've been talking about the research into ghost groups and the research into the history of the spiritualist movement, and having done the same research, the spiritualist movement is absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But have you ever had any unusual experiences of your own?
Oddly enough, I was just asked this question at an event, like a Halloween paranormal author event that I was at a couple weeks ago. And this is going to sound goofy, but the one I came up with is in elementary school. I was at a sleepover where we did light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Oh,
And
yes.
it worked.
Yeah, I had a
Totally
pretty
works.
weird experience with that myself, actually.
Yeah, but the problem is the thing they don't warn you about is when you do light as a feather, stiff as a board, and it works, and you've got your friend like 5 feet in the air over your head, everybody freaks out at that point because it worked. And they start screaming, and then you drop her.
Yep, that's
And
exactly
they
what happened to
scream
us.
more, and it's like there's lots of screaming, and I was not prepared for the screaming.
The power of the mind.
That's
I'm telling
exactly.
you.
So you got to do it over a bed.
I was older. I was like 16, and it was a Halloween party, and we had a friend of mine about to waist height, and we all looked at each other and went, "What the heck?" And about half of us
Yeah.
dropped him.
Thud.
Well, that's just it. It's like the minute you realize what's actually going on, is it all goes away. So it's funny. It was we were this was like 3rd grade, so we must have been like 8 years old, 9 years old, something.
You may have
Just
been
imagine it like all these tiny little girls with, she was over our heads, and then we dropped her, and it was bad.
40 pounds ain't that heavy until it hits the ground. Then it's just pretty damn tough.
and when it's when it's all 8-year-olds.
Yep. Everybody
Limits
screams,
were
she's
just
dead.
thrilled to hit the
It's pretty
ground.
hardcore, man.
It's hilarious.
Although I hate to say it, just being me, but the reality is, it's a trick.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's a nice mentalism trick.
Well, it's actually more than anything, it's a physics trick
To some degree, yeah.
because it's distribution of weight
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, distribution of weight, but I am impressed that we got a bunch of squealing 8-year-old girls to focus enough to actually accomplish it.
now getting
That's the supernatural.
a gang of 8-year-old girls to work in concert because you all need to live together at the same time to make the trick work. So that is a paranormal feat.
That is a
8-year-old
paranormal
girls
feat.
to
We
do.
need to actually get photographic evidence of this and make sure that it's fully documented. That's an SCP. That's an SCP. 6 8-year-old little girls actually working in tandem with each other at the same rate.
Yeah,
That's SCP 5001. There you go.
but you can do the
Actually know the number.
Sure.
you can actually do the same trick with just 4 people.
Oh, yes.
It's just placing fingers in different places and
And remembering that weight is a thing and gravity is a thing. Yes.
well, it's lifting again. It's got to be all together at the same time.
Oh,
in
yes.
concert.
Oh, yes. It is a little...
Well, I'll say, and this is a crossover point, it also makes me think of my friend Lupus Creepus' channel, because he did the Light as a Feather, and he also took part, I don't know who originally came up with it, but they did a reading of one of the chapters. The one where Corbett and Kitty meet.
Oh yeah.
But you might check, if you haven't seen it, Dr. Kitty Solves All Your Problems, I think is the name of the video.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the original short story. It actually, it started out as a short story and it was published in Weird Tales. I need to double check, but I think that story is on my website. You might have to do a little digging around. But if you go to carrievaughn.com and click on the kitty link, there's, the cover of the kitty book there. And yeah, that's the original short story.
And listeners, I'll put a link to her
that I
website in the
expanded out
description.
to the novel eventually, yeah. Sorry?
No, I was just saying, I'll put a link to your website in the description of the video when I put it up on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Oh, cool, thank you.
No problem. I mean, it's like, you're kind enough to give us the interview. We want to help promote your stuff, and, everybody wins.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. We gotta love, the stuff that we write in the past somehow becomes relevant to the present and the future and will never leave us, and sometimes will bring smiles to people's faces long after the fact.
We've gone over the usual point where we do this, but I do want to give listeners a chance if anybody would like to call in and has a question for Carrie. 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492.
You will call. Yes.
Oh, that's why you have a hypnotist on the show. Now I
Yes!
understand.
Of course.
Also, who do you think reads our ads?
I am the voice of a generation.
I actually have a quick question.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Beth, our producer.
Yeah, hi, I'm the disembodied voice behind the curtain behind these chuckleheads. When were you in Weird Tales?
Oh, let's see. The first kitty story, I think, appeared in 2001.
Okay.
And then I had a couple of other stories after that. Probably I had a handful of stories between about 2001 and 2006. I think were the years I appeared there.
Nice. I was just checking because my mom's third husband was in it decades beforehand. But it's like, I've read that publication before, and it had gone out of print. I'm actually glad that it came back. So.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
a very
it's,
venerable
I
publication.
think it's in one of its hiatuses right now. It's changed ownership a couple of times, and it's I don't want to say it's defunct because it's zombie-like. It does rise from the ashes now and then. But yeah, I haven't heard much about it recently.
Weird Tales.
Well, I for one at least hope it comes back. I mean, you're talking about a magazine that has its roots in the pulp era.
Oh, yes.
Oh, exactly. I used to brag about that you know, the Conan stories and Kitty both got their start in Weird Tales. So
There you go.
it's quite a pedigree.
Yeah, that's
Without
great. It's like if you're going to start in a short story magazine, that is a great first one.
Without a doubt.
So what are you working on now? Like, what is your current stuff?
I'm working on a lot of things right now that it's kind of driving me a little bit crazy because I've got so many balls in the air. My two most recent novels are part of a series of post-apocalyptic murder mysteries.
Ooh.
And that's Bannerless and The Wild Dead. Bannerless came out last year and The Wild Dead came out this year. Bannerless won this year's Philip K. Dick Award for
Nice.
science
Very
fiction.
nice.
So I'm bragging on that a little bit.
You deserve
You
to.
should. That's awesome.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I've been working on. I still write a lot of short fiction, so if you go onto Tor.com or like Speed Magazine or Asimov Science Fiction, I've had short stories in all of those places recently, as well as anthologies, and there's just always something cooking.
She mentioned my hero, Asimov.
Asimov, yeah.
Oh, yes. Without a doubt.
And it's definitely, I mean, short stories, I hate to say it, it's
It's a dying
di-
medium.
Yeah, which
It
is a
is.
pity, because a good,
I hate
sometimes
it.
a good short story is exactly what you wanted.
Oh, God, yes.
In and out.
It's hard
I
to do
don't know
well.
that it is. Because at least within science fiction and fantasy, there's a ton of online magazines that are doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, anthologies are kind of having a little bit of a golden age over the last couple of years. So I find a lot of places, to publish my short stories with.
Fantastic.
But it may just be like that. I don't know how horror is doing right now. So if you're looking in that area, that may be a little different. But I know, even in horror, Nightmare Magazine, The Dark, a lot of it's online now, but there's some good stuff out there.
Yeah.
She's talking, wait, wouldn't SCP kind of like classify as short story?
Yeah.
Or creepypastas?
In a way, they're
Wouldn't what?
creepypastas.
Can I tell her what the SCP is? Can I tell her what the SCP is?
Yeah, it's called the SCP Foundation. I'll let Baron explain what it is.
The SCP Foundation originally started as a writing project on either Reddit or Creepypasta, where authors would send in perfectly formatted scientific, I guess you could call them reports, on creatures, events, and objects of supernatural nature, and created a fictional fictional organization called the SCP that is meant to secure, contain, and protect the world from any of these objects, creatures, and places. And the thing, it started off small, and people would just keep on submitting various entries. It's so rigorously edited, it's not even funny. And there's over 5,000 entries now. It is a veritable library of short stories, interviews. It's like pure scientific documentation. If you like a blend of the supernatural as well as the science fiction, you'll get addicted within 10 minutes of reading. Hands
Well, and it
down.
sounds like I don't know if you're familiar with the shared world concept, where you get a bunch of authors writing stories in the same universe.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Kind of with the same rules and the same set of characters and that kind of thing. That sounds a little bit like that.
Oh, yes.
Very much so. I mean, the internet kind of, it's like the thing, the short story magazines are fading, unfortunately, but the internet's picking up the slack.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you have the websites that you're talking about, you've got SCP, you've got the creepypasta genre.
It
Which is a good
seriously
thing.
It has taken off. You know,
if you look at like the stories that have been getting nominated for the Hugos and the Nebulas over the last few years, a lot of them have been coming from the online magazines.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a lot of where the audience is going, and yeah, there's, like I said, there's some pretty good stuff out there.
I very strongly recommend you check out the SCP. You might end up throwing a couple of characters up. I kid you not.
It's addictive. I mean, it's basically the field reports of Warehouse 13.
It is the original. It is the X-Files.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then there's, did you ever watch, this is kind of digging way back, but Friday the 13th?
Yes, I love Friday the 13th.
Oh, yes, Friday the 13th, the series. Think of that expanded. That's what this is.
It's more. I think it's more Warehouse 13 than Friday the 13th because I loved Friday the 13th, but it was all occult, preternatural objects. Where Warehouse 13 and SCP are more what I'd call 40 because it just runs the whole bloody gambit of possibility.
Oh yes.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it doesn't necessarily stick to just the serious or the scary. Sometimes they get really silly. And just downright like bizarre. Can I cite one of the most bizarre ones I remember?
I don't want to get that far off top.
Understood.
Although I will say, Carrie, thank you for remembering Friday the 13th, the TV series.
Oh yes.
I always feel like the nerd when I bring it up to people and they look at me like, "You mean the movies?"
Oh, I remember.
Oh no.
I remember.
I used to watch
I'm
it.
not a fan of the movies, but the show.
The early days of Fox. That and Werewolf, the series.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yes.
From the original season of Fox.
Yes, I watched that.
You want to know something interesting about Friday the 13th, the series? Two particular bits. One, Undertaker had a cameo, and two.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Undertaker had a cameo, and two, one of the original male actors that was on that show was actually in one of the movies. Was in Friday the 13th, one of the Friday the 13th movies. I think it was Jason Goes to Hell, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what it was supposed to be. I should say what was supposed to be the Flash.
Yeah, what I was about to say.
It's never the last one.
Well, no, there was even there was always the running joke apparently with the series that they were going to have a set piece at one point that would just be a hockey mask.
And a claw?
Oh yeah.
No, just the hockey mask as a reference to the movies.
Oh gosh.
Or
yes.
that the last episode they were going to be going after Jason Voorhees' mask.
That would be awesome.
And ultimately what they did is there's a book that takes place after. It's a book that's part of the canon of the Friday the 13th novels that takes place after Jason Goes to Hell, which is Mickey and Rashid all come to Camp Crystal Lake to hunt down Jason.
Nice.
Say explicitly, yes, they are in the same universe.
Without a doubt.
Nice.
But okay, we're coming up at the end of our first hour. Well, we're actually going to wind up being able to go another hour. Although, Carrie, as much fun as this is, we're probably going to let you go at the 7:30 mark. We do have some other topics to get into, and we'd originally only expected to be an hour. But thank you for joining us.
Without a doubt. Please call back in again if you ever have a few moments.
Yeah, do you have anything that you want to...
Well, you said you've got a lot of things working on. Do you have any books coming out shortly? Anything you particularly would like to plug?
Okay, yeah. So I have a novella. The ebook is available on all the regular ebook platforms. It's called Paranormal Bromance. And it's about 3 Gen X vampires living in a basement apartment. And mostly it's about how Gen Xers make terrible vampires.
Nice.
I need to look this up.
They
My
don't care
vampire's
about
a
the
Gen
vampire
Xer.
politics. They don't really, they're just minding their own business. So I wrote the novella a couple of years ago, but I just released a limited edition with Fairwood Press. So it's a signed, numbered, limited edition hardcover. If any of your listeners are into that kind of thing, they can order it from Fairwood Press. And that just came out, like literally last week.
Nice. Sounds
and
like fun.
I've got a short story in an anthology called Mechanical Animals that just came out this week. It's edited by Selena Chambers and Jason Heller. And my story is called Closer to the Sky, and it's a Western about a bionic horse.
Nice.
I approve.
So that's the kind of thing I work on.
I so approve.
And Carrie, if you want to give me email me a link to the website for the hardcover, I'll be happy to put that in the description as well.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Very awesome.
So yeah, everybody, you can look in the description. I'll have links to Carrie's website. I'll have links for that. I'll hunt up and get a link to at least one of the ebook copies, or as well as Paranormal Bromance, because 3 Gen X vampires living in a basement.
Yeah, and I just wanted on the record, I came up with my story about vampire roommates before What We Do in the Shadows came out.
I was going to say it
but
sounds
the stories
a
are
little
very
like
different
vampy.
anyway. So
Yeah.
All awesome. Oh, there you go.
Well, that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with you had a similar concept. You came up with it first. They had a similar concept. You both went in very different directions with it.
We went in probably, I mean, it's most likely that we came up with them at the same time because movies take a little longer to get made than books, I think. But yeah, very different directions. It's just really funny. This happens to a lot of writers where you have this great idea and you come out with it and then somebody else does something similar. But, it ends up not mattering because we all have different, ideas are one thing, but execution is totally different, usually.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and again, it's like everybody, we have a similar shared experiences as a species, culture and as a species. And some ideas are just going to occur to multiple people,
Yep.
Edward, paranormal bounty hunter that hunts vampires and werewolves. Cormac, bounty hunter that hunts vampires and werewolves. But they're very different they're their own character. It's a similar idea.
And
it's
as
not
a confession,
Yeah.
you were asking earlier about, influences and things. I've sort of come to realize that almost all of the bounty hunter characters that I've ever seen in urban fantasy can probably trace back to Alamo Joe in the Werewolf TV series. And I think that was definitely a subconscious influence. But yeah, it's archetypes. We have these archetypes that kind of percolate.
No
throughout,
question.
So yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, the bounty hunter it goes back to the Old West. It is a classic.
Oh, yeah.
Star Wars, did it. Everybody else does it. It's not.
No, yep.
It isn't
Yep.
always so important to have a completely new idea. It's you take this idea and make it your own.
Well, because it's fun. We like the ideas because they're so much fun.
Exactly.
All right.
But, okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
You are.
You're very welcome.
You were a pleasure
You've been a
to
pleasure.
hear.
You're as I have been lucky enough to say to many of our other guests, you are always welcome back here.
Indeed.
Well, thank you so much. And once again, I appreciate the invitation.
Again, absolutely our pleasure.
Without a doubt, it's been an honor.
Yep. Very nice.
Okay, I think that'll wrap it up. Unless anybody's got a last question, comment.
Concern cash payment? Remember, you will pay me.
Okay.
See?
I think we'll let you go, and then we do have some other stuff to get into tonight.
Indeed.
Again, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to send me that link so I can include it in the description for our listeners.
I will do. Have a good evening.
Indeed.
You too.
Right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Carrie Vaughn, author of the Kitty Norville novels. She was a great guest.
Oh, yes.
I'm very glad that she joined us. And she is a great writer. I highly recommend checking out her books. Remember, you can go to the Audible trial link in the description, audibletrial.com/paranormale. Go look up, Carrie Vaughn, Kitty Norville, and the Midnight Hour. Get her first book for free.
Yes.
You help her out, you help the show out, and you get a great book.
Now I got to pick it up. Damn you. Damn you.
You don't happen to have them, do you?
I used to have the first one, but I lost it. I had it 3 or 4 moves back.
There's a place in hell for people that lose books. You realize that, don't you?
Remember, a huge part of my collection got lost when I couldn't make a storage payment.
Good point.
That's a really sore subject. So let's not go there.
Sympathies.
So there are 2 things I want to get into. One of which is actually another YouTuber, and something they brought up that I think is extremely important. But before we do that, I do have an offer to do.
Ooh.
For our listeners. So this specifically is going to be for people who are listening in, and if nobody takes it next week, we'll do it this week. We'll do it next week as well. You guys have heard, and if you keep an eye on the YouTube channel, you have seen me talk about the Empty Faces boxes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Empty Faces is kind of like a loot crate. It's a loot crate of horror, and it's almost escape room in a box. It's a series of boxes. There's 3 seasons, each of which has 5 boxes, each telling a story about this woman whose granddaughter has been influenced by an evil force. But at any rate, if somebody wants to call in, or I'll say just say call in. I do happen to have. I got in my most recent box. I'm on number 3 of the first season. A bunch of gift cards that are good for $20 off your first box of either. If you want to do Empty Faces, you can get it there, or if you want to do Hunt a Killer, which is their serial killer themed one, it's also good on that. The only stipulation that they have is that it has to be a new subscription. But if anybody calls in between now and the end of the show and asks for it, you can we have one to give away.
There you go.
But
we've resorted now to bribery.
Well, no, giveaways are a pretty standard thing for radio shows.
I know, I'm messing around.
It's not quite bribery. But so there's another topic I want to
call in.
Yeah.
You will call in.
Get into partly because I did promise somebody I would do, and I didn't think I was going to have the time to do this as much as we can. But I did promise another YouTuber I was going to get into this, at least briefly, to give a mention to her new series about it. So there's a YouTuber by the name of Shannon Q. Shannon Q is an atheist that I actually happen to really like and respect. Is what she does is she does a lot of religious topics and atheist topics, and particularly she has a series, Let's Talk About You, where she'll invite on various fringier religious figures and just sit down and have a normal conversation with them about what they believe and what they think. And it's very non-confrontational, non-judgmental. It's a discussion. And I really respect that, and I respect this goal she has of just opening up a dialogue and getting the two sides talking to each other like reasonable adults. And what I find interesting is this new series she's doing is about Christian counseling. And specifically, this really predatory new form of Christian counseling that's becoming popular that Jesus sees as a problem. And for the record, and again, I'll have a link in the description below so you can see what she has to say on the subject, because she being an actual practicing psychologist with a proper degree knows more about this than I do. I agree with her completely. Because here's what's going on. Normally, there are counselors who are Christian, which are not the problem. And there are these Christian counselors that she's talking about that are. So normally if you want to be, if I wanted to go be a counselor, I got to go to college. I got to get a bachelor's, master's, PhD. I have to study psychology or social services or some other legitimate program and get from an accredited university. And then once I'm done with that, I have to go to the state and get a license. And each state has different standards under which they give you a license. Now, there is this movement, this Christian counseling movement, in which, one, they will give you your bachelor's, your master's, and even your PhD through the internet. So you're talking about a correspondence, mail-order doctorate.
Right. Completely worthless.
Yeah, it has no value. It's not an accredited university. Pretty much it's a diploma mill. And then, to make yourself a counselor, normally, again, you have to go through state licensing, and how much the state, as I understand it, and I may be wrong, how much the state requires depends on which state. Some states, Delaware, for example, from what I understand, have looser, or at least at one time that may have changed, had fairly loose requirements, where California has incredibly strict ones. But here's the thing. If you are a religious counselor and you are working through a church, you're exempt from the state licensing laws. This is not a good thing. This becomes even more problematic because of the fact that not only is this non-accredited course giving you a phony degree, it's telling you how to bypass the licensing laws so you can become a counselor.
Right.
Specifically suggesting that you either, A, go to your own church and get them to hire you on, because now you're working for the church. Nope, you don't have to be licensed. Or if you can't find a church that'll hire you, just start your own church.
Which is, again, ridiculously easy these days.
Yeah, it's not hard. I mean, I have, I'm a Christian myself. I have nothing against legitimate Christian counselors. There are many fine ones, because they are actual legitimate counselors, and they happen to be Christian. Even yeah, but it's a serious threat to public mental health to claim that you have a counsel to be a therapist or to be a counselor and have no legitimate training. People are going to get hurt. Yeah, any thought? You're usually big on the mental health thing as well as I am. Do you have any comments?
No, I mean I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's a scam and it should be shut down.
Yeah, so you can look up Shannon Q on YouTube. There'll be a link in the description. It's very much worth checking out. And where did Chris go?
Probably out to smoke.
Yeah, most likely.
He may have had a phone call or something.
Also possible. But and that's the bottom line. There's a big thing. And here's the thing with what I do. Actually, here's another consideration I didn't even think of. I don't know how true this is, but there is a reality of that actual licensed counselors are held to ethical standards.
Yeah.
Ideally, I would hope that being that they claim to be Christian, that these counselors would be holding themselves to high ethical standards. The reality can be complicated. And actually, even I'll say this, the thing I would seriously consider to anyone who's considering getting this kind of credential, or for that matter, this also applies to people that want to get in my line of work and want to be paranormal investigators. You've got to be really careful. Depending on this, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I cannot give I do not know the law well enough to give legal advice. But for paranormal investigators, let me make the following observation based on people I know who are therapists that have told me this. Ghost hunters, particularly ghost hunters that deal with the violent stuff like me, can qualify as a type of religious or spiritual counselor, which means you can be liable if you do certain stupid things. Case in point, one of the real problems you see in the paranormal community is investigators sleeping with their clients.
Wow.
You can't. I get it, and here's the thing. I've been doing this 20 years. Clients, especially when you're dealing with a violent case, people are desperate. People are extreme. Situations are emotionally charged. It is you need to be aware of that, because you resolve a situation for a person who's having a really nightmarish situation, they're going to be grateful. Or even just the fact that you're a lifeline in a serious situation.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to the legal repercussions of doing that, although I'm reasonably certain there probably are some, depending on your state, depending on how they view these things. But morally speaking, you need to be very cautious what you do, because you don't want to take advantage of people. Also, real bluntly, if you get a reputation for doing this, other groups aren't going to work with you. Other groups aren't going to take you seriously. I'll put it like this. If I find out about a group doing this, I'll break my I don't badmouth groups on my show rule. Because there are lines you don't cross. There are ethical rules that we're supposed to follow. And this is a big one. And this to bring back on topic to, if you're offering somebody therapy, be sure you know what the hell you're doing. You have people who have the best intentions in the world, because I've had, I told a long time ago when I still had the money to go back to school, or potentially had the money. At this point, I'm too broke. But I was going to go back to school for psychology, and I had a guy I know, I wouldn't necessarily call him a friend, go, why do you want to do that? I can tell you whatever's wrong with you right now. And people think they can do that.
Armchair psychologist.
Yes. It's like, and there's value to have a friend who's willing to listen to you. But there's the reality of, especially if you're talking about psychiatry, and I was young enough that I could have potentially gone back and gone to medical school and things of that nature, if I turned around gone back and gotten better grades than I had in the past. There are certain things that can only be treated with medication.
I thought about going for counseling and whatnot, and being a psychologist. but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Psychologists, I think, what you need at least a master's.
It depends. For certain types of counseling, you can just go through a licensing program where you get training. But those are for specific types.
Narrow focuses.
You're talking things like addiction services, people that like I'm actually looking into that now as a possibility, as a peer counselor.
Okay. But again, it's legitimate licensing and an actual program.
Yeah, it's a state-run program. It's got standards and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's not just, here you go, you can call yourself a doctor now.
And there are plenty of people that do that.
And the problem is you can't, it's hard to check those things.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what are legitimate or illegitimate universities. If something sounds good.
No, if Shannon, if you listen to this, if you're listening, happen to be listening now, or if you listen to this at some point in the future, I'd really like to have you come on. And one thing I'd like to talk about is, like, how do you recognize the fakes from the real? Because that is a serious issue. And you can do a lot of detective work and background. Okay, well, where did you go to school? Look up the school. Is it accredited? But that could potentially be a little. Because there's plenty of, I've seen enough of the diploma mills that use names very similar to legitimate schools. The people that are running scams know how to run them. They know how to give themselves a degree of legitimacy. Case in point, with this religious one, they are offering licensing. It's their own license. It's not a government license. It's a license through this guy who runs the program who has a doctorate, also from this mail order type of thing, that has his own. He's invented his own therapy technique that isn't. There's no, as far as I remember from Shannon's video and anything else I've seen on it, there is no peer review of it. There's no, it's not a tested thing.
Right.
But you're looking at it, it's like, oh well, he's licensed. Okay, he does have he has a doctorate from such and such university. Like, that seems reasonable. That seems rational.
Yeah. If you don't know any better, you're not going to know to check this stuff.
Yeah, and there are a few things that get me as upset as this kind of scam. And and there's a whole series of them, because you get people giving medical advice that don't know what the hell they're talking about. You get people that give psychiatric advice that don't know what they're talking about. All the various scam quack remedies out there that people put blind faith in, and people die. I had an argument very recently on Facebook with a good friend of mine, because I have a great deal of, as you guys know, and listeners that have been here for a while now, I have a great deal of anger towards the anti-vaccination movement.
Yeah.
And there's a story not that long ago about a newborn baby who caught, whatchamacallit?
H1N1 or something? Or
No,
adenovirus?
Bigger than that. Meningitis.
Oh.
And this is something I hadn't known at the time, is that there is in fact a vaccine for meningitis.
Yes.
But the baby was too young to have been given the vaccine, caught meningitis from an unvaccinated child, and the baby died.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know about the unvaccinated kid, but the idiotic superstitions of that parent just cost somebody else's kid their life.
Yeah, that's wrong.
And I'll be blunt, I think that the parent of that unvaccinated kid should face manslaughter charges.
Or get infected themselves with something worse.
Why not both?
Yes.
Be aware, folks, be aware of this stuff. There are a lot of people, and, oh good, Carrie just sent me the links.
Okay.
So they will definitely be in the description. It'll be up later tonight on YouTube later tonight when I get home. And you guys can check those out. It's the thing I get, and I think this is something skeptics have raised this with me before, and it's not an unfair accusation of what I do. The simple fact is, I can't prove in any objective sense that spirits are real, the demons are real, the possession is real. Here's at least one major difference between me and the quacks. You will never hear me tell someone, either a client or on this show, to stop seeing a legitimate medical doctor. Either psychiatrist or just a standard family practitioner or anything of the sort. I am not qualified to give you medical advice. And there's also the reality of just because you have a spiritual problem doesn't mean everything else is hunky-dory.
Usually one causes the other.
Yeah, there could be a causal relationship. It can be an incident. Sometimes it's just both.
Yeah.
I've seen cases where people who were possessed, who were mentally ill, and just because you get rid of the spirit that's possessing that person, they don't magically stop being mentally ill. It's not how. And you'll find, and this is another group, and this is another serious concern I have with Christian counselors. There is a subcategory of Christian counselor that blames everything on demons. And it makes what I do look bad, and it makes what actual legitimate counseling look bad, and it puts people in danger. Again, ideally, if I'm getting involved in a case, it's very rare that somebody's actually possessed. But if I was ever going to get to a point where I thought somebody was possessed, I want to get a psychiatrist involved. I want to get a medical doctor involved. I mean, there are certainly certain things. If you're sitting talking to somebody and all of a sudden the sofa you're sitting on literally levitates off the ground, okay, that's not a mental illness. Objects don't float of their own accord under natural laws. But if somebody just looking at me and talking to me a little funny, on some of these other things,
that could be dissociative.
Dissociative identity disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. There's a laundry list of things that can strongly resemble demonic possession.
Yes.
And the therapists and the deliverance ministers, I don't want to call them exorcists, so I hate calling deliverance ministers, because the reality is there's deliverance ministers that know what they're doing as well. But it's a higher percentage among deliverance ministers, in my experience, that fall into this trap than people that are actual proper exorcists. Because being a proper exorcist usually means an actual formal ordination that you went to seminary school. And there's organizations to train. There are organizations that exorcists that have any experience or belong to, and that share information, and they work with psychologists and psychiatrists, and they work with medical doctors, and they keep track of these kinds of things. But there are people who think, oh, you're addicted to, you're an alcoholic, that's a demon. You eat too much junk food, that's a demon. Video games, demon. And that's not how this works. That's not even how the Bible says this works. I'm going to get scriptural on this for a moment, because I'm specifically attacking a subsect of Christians. Although, trust me, there are non-Christians that pull this kind of nonsense too. They call it different things, but it's the same nonsense. But if you read your Bible, it says that Jesus healed the sick as well as cast out demons. Mental illness is an illness. Clinical depression, schizophrenia are caused by known physical factors, by chemical imbalances, by abnormal some type of schizophrenia are tied to abnormal structures in your brain.
Genetic predisposition.
You cannot cast illness out of a person as if it was a demon. It doesn't work that way. You can pray for someone who's sick. That is a thing in the Bible. Here's the thing, and this is another important subgenre that ties into here, because you have groups that act rationally about all this. Of your friend is sick, your mother is sick, you pray for them. You pray for them while they go to the doctors. There is nothing wrong. I am not bad-mouthing that idea at all. I think there are valid psychiatric benefits to it, whether or not you think prayer has a magical power or not. What I object to is praying instead of going to the doctors. That gets people killed.
Agreed.
Now, I'm not sure if it was covered or not, but what would you say would be to someone that is suddenly, almost an acute amount of time, pursuing dark studies, subject matter, out of nowhere? Someone that suddenly takes an interest in that which normally it would be almost like Mr. Rogers suddenly deciding to read Crowley. Such a 180 change in behavior.
It raises, I mean, there's a lot of red flags that starts to raise. But there are psychological explanations, there are social explanations. This person needs to sit down with somebody who knows what they're doing, because something strange is going on. I'm very to call something paranormal. I want to see something paranormal.
Right.
But that is certainly the sort of, lo and behold, some happy people have something really horrible happen to them, and they start cracking open Crowley to figure out how to curse the person who did it to them.
Yes.
I don't recommend that path either for obvious reasons. But it still comes. I mean, it's hard. I hate to use the term because I'm not any kind of doctor, but there is, for lack of a better way of putting it, a form of diagnosis that goes into the kind of work I do. Of, are we dealing with something paranormal? Are we dealing with something that definitely is paranormal, something that definitely isn't paranormal, or do we not know and we need to look into it more?
Or could it be one being exacerbated by the other?
Yes. And often, the answer is often somewhere in between. There are certain, absolutely cases, there are people who've reached out to me for help that didn't need my help. They needed help. They just needed a psychiatrist. And oftentimes in those cases, I can sit and I can talk to the person, I can ask them a couple of pertinent questions, and go, okay, with all due respect, you need to talk to a shrink. And often enough, I don't. There are times I don't know, and I'll have to actually physically go out there, or I'll have to refer it to somebody who has skills I don't have. Someone. I had a woman approach me many years ago at a lecture, who was experiencing sleep paralysis, and it kept sitting on the fence between maybe there's something paranormal here and maybe it's just sleep paralysis. And so ultimately we wound up having her talk to a friend of ours who was a licensed therapist, who was familiar with sleeping disorders, who was able to go, yeah, this is a sleeping disorder, this isn't paranormal. But this is one of those cases. It's like, I'd want to sit down with this person, I'd want to look at what books they're reading. I need more information than what you necessarily can give me to make those kinds of judgments. I wish often I could give easy. There are lots of times people come to me, and this is a common thing in general, not just with this type of situation. Of 10 years ago, this weird thing happened to me. What was it? And I get the feeling sometimes people are like, oh, well, that was a Class 37A spirit doing, filling out Form 6B, and it's like, I wish it was that simple.
In triplicate.
Yeah. And for that matter, for all I know, spirits do have to fill out paperwork in triplicate.
That would be the seventh circle of hell.
I had a friend of mine claim once upon a time, and I'll say honestly, I was skeptical, but I did know somebody once who claimed to be able to communicate with angels that claimed that the chief job of the angel of death was to fill out the paperwork.
Sounds logical.
It's like, wow, I don't envy that job.
Oh, he does it all for the glory of the Lord.
Yeah, I still don't envy that job. It's like, think about how much paperwork somebody dies here. On the other side, it's like,
Yeah.
Okay, name, age, birth date, death date, fate of your eternal soul.
Manner of death.
Oh yeah, there's a whole embarrassment. It's like, you die in some cool epic way, and then you get up to heaven. How'd you die? Oh, I got blown up trying to stop a speeding bus.
Roll to bluff St.
Yeah.
Peter.
Or how did you die? I tripped in the bathtub, fell over, fell down a flight of stairs, and broke my neck naked, and then was found by my mother. Do you want to be that guy when you get upstairs?
No, everybody wants to go out spectacularly.
Well, that was, tripping out of your bathtub and down the stairs butt naked is a pretty spectacular way to die. It's just spectacularly embarrassing.
I can think of worse.
Oh, undoubtedly. But you have to admit, it is definitely embarrassing.
Get out.
It's my show, man. He ain't kicking me out. So, I want to remind folks again, feel free to call in 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492. I do still have that coupon. I can give one lucky caller if you want to call in. And if you email me after the show, you ain't getting it. You got to call in live. You got to call in live. We got to be able to pick on you.
Yes, just a little bit. I promise. I won't manipulate your brain too much, and you probably won't remember it when I get
To
done.
give you an idea of how much of a deal it is, the boxes are $30 a month, plus like $3 for shipping and handling. $20. So basically, you're paying $10 for your box.
More or less.
With with what I can give you.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, if you're wondering what it is, you can look on YouTube. There's a whole series of videos of me unboxing the first two, and hopefully by the end of the weekend, the third box of Empty Faces. It's if you like horror, and if you don't like horror, you're probably listening to the wrong show.
No, there's plenty of other intrinsic subjects we could cover that are outside of horror.
True. Yeah, but most of what we cover tends to fall into the horror genre.
True.
But if you like mysteries and puzzles and escape rooms,
you right there, bro. Believe it or not, if you want to talk about mysteries, darkness, and whatnot, and puzzles and somewhat, there was a series of interactive entertainment referred to as just The Room. And it was a 4-game series.
Yes, I played some of it.
Yes, all 4 of them. Really delve into the whole Lovecraftian, while at the same time a bit on the dark, parallel universe-y aspects. Curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Unfortunately, it's been a long time since I've played any of them.
My sympathies.
Yeah, I remember enjoying them. I love puzzle games. I love logic puzzles in general and things that make your brain go. I mean, Amisha, who's sitting over there, and I have done 2 escape rooms now. And we got out of both of them.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Were you the type of person to immediately try and steamroll the puzzle, like tell everybody, get out of my way and give me that, I know how to solve it?
No. No, that was the fun part. It was the first time we did it, which we did because the theme was fun. It was a samurai escape room. And we wound up just showing up and then being thrown in with a group of other people that we didn't know. The group had gone together. We just signed on because there was open slots.
Oh.
And it came really close to us not getting out of the room, but we managed to crack it. And then the second time, it was just the 2 of us in the room for an hour.
Did you get out of that one?
Yes.
Nice.
I've done 2 escape rooms, and so far I'm 2 for 0.
I'm gonna have to try one sometime.
We should see about doing one as a group.
Oh God.
I saw that there's at least one local one. I don't know if it was just a Halloween thing or if it's a permanent one that has a paranormal investigation based escape room.
Sweet.
We gotta look into doing that.
There's one near me. I didn't do well at it.
Yeah, I heard about you guys doing that and that you didn't get out.
Nope.
I actually watched it, and for anyone who's interested in those, there's a video on YouTube about how to get out, how to plan to get out of it. And the guy who did the video actually went to the guy who designed the idea of escape rooms to begin with.
Everything has its inventor.
Yep. And it's interesting about breaking it down and giving people specific jobs to do. It's like, you're going over there, you're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that, and instead of everybody gathering around and trying to solve the same thing at once.
Right. Too many hands.
Exactly. Well, and that was one of the interesting things. One of the simplest jobs that they suggested is have somebody whose job is just to coordinate. You stand in the center of a room and you direct everybody else.
That would be me. Yeah. Chances are.
Instead of cracking the puzzles yourself.
Although I'd be the kind of person to get frustrated. I'll be like, get out of my way. I know how to solve this already.
Yeah. See,
And the Empty Faces is interesting. This is a combination of different things. I mean, the first box was semaphore code, and simple letter substitution code.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And the second box was more semaphore, and the letter substitution. And then once you did the letter substitution, there was another letter substitution built into that.
Nice.
And the current one, there's more, still more semaphore, more of the code from the first thing, and it just keeps building on each other. You okay?
All right.
I thought he tripped over you or something.
No, I dropped this.
Careless.
It fell out of my pocket.
And we're coming up on the half-hour mark. I'm thinking we might as well.
I think we should call it.
I think it's probably a good point to call it a night.
It's up to you, Kev.
And it's kind of a Steam issue of, do we have...
I don't have anything more
Yeah.
really to say.
I get it.
We want to thank Gene, of course, for giving us the extra time. And we should keep things rolling a bit, because we do want to still do our second ad.
Oh,
I learned of something
Unless-
sad that happened
yeah.
yesterday.
What?
As much as you don't like the show.
What?
The creator of SpongeBob died yesterday at 57.
That's my age.
That's unfortunate. That's a young guy.
that's young, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a SpongeBob fan at all.
Me neither.
Most
But
were kind of late for it.
I don't think I would have liked it as a kid either. It's not my style of humor. You want to pass over the ad? And
Yeah, you want to take a...
yeah, I can take a crack at it. I don't have Baron's dulcet tones, but I think I can read an ad. Unless you want to read it.
No, go ahead. I made it so it was pretty readable.
You did. Okay, so folks, we are going to be wrapping it up here. I want to give a shout out to our other sponsor, which would be NordVPN. Everyone is concerned with internet security these days, from governments to major corporations. Even the average internet user should be concerned about who is seeing your online information and how that information can be used. NordVPN is the answer you've been looking for. A VPN is a virtual private network that protects your IP address so that your online activity is protected by a military-grade encryption. The way it works is you connect to Nord's protected network, and then they connect to the internet. It's a layer of protection between you and the viruses, malware, and snoopers out there. Nord works on all devices too, not just your computers, your phone, your tablet, whatever, up to 6 devices at a time, regardless of what operating system they use. Nord works with them all. Access to all the internet content you want, streaming media, websites, and social platforms, nothing is restricted to Nord, so it's a great way to get around this pesky firewalls at work, or maybe you live in a country that isn't so internet friendly. They have easy plans starting as low as $11.95 a month down to 3-year plans as low as $2.75 a month. Check it out risk-free at the link in the description to help out the show, and you'll be glad you did.
Sounds good.
So keep in mind Nord, links in the description, and again, audibletrial.com/paranormal. Link also in the description if you forget from me saying it. And we just had a great author on the show that her stuff's on there and read by a great voice artist. We will be back next week. I do want to remind folks as well, if you can support, the best ways to support the show, if you don't have the money for Nord and you don't have them, and you already have your free Audible trial, you already got your free Audible trial at some point, just like, comment, subscribe. We're at 461 subscribers, and I want to thank each and every one of you. Actually, in fact, I'm going to give a shout out to one of them because he's sort of an acquaintance of mine and a good guy. There's a guy, Jim Stott. He has Amazon store called Jim Stott's Magic. It has a really great collection of magic kits. Prices are very reasonable, and the quality of I mean, I've bought a bunch of magic kits. It's a great way to get a collection of props cheap when you're first getting into magic. His stats are really good quality for both for the amount that you're paying and for, I hate to say it, a kid's magic set, and they're designed in such a way that kids will find it useful, adults find it useful. They're great sets. I definitely recommend checking them out. It even has one for little kids I bought for my nephew. He loves it. And this is not a paid endorsement. I'm just, just like with Empty Faces, they don't pay us to do this. I just like boosting my friends and people that I think have interesting
They should.
products. I still want to get them on. I need to poke them about that. But that's going to do it for this week. This is Kevin Mears, the Paranormal Encyclopedia, saying have a good night and God bless.
Keep your fangs sharp.
And I'm sure Baron would say live long and prosper and avoid lightning rods.
Yes.
But that's going to do it for tonight. Tune in next week. Good night and God bless everybody.